Hi again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Wrestling Inc. Weekly. I'm Raj Giri of WrestlingINC.com, and joining me as always, he's a TV producer and writer, and is a former WWE Creative executive, as well as the founder of Major League Wrestling, Court Bauer. Court, how's it going?
Hey, man. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. And it's been a slow past few weeks, and then things picked up in a big way this week. So let's get right into it. Did you get a chance to watch all of Raw on Monday night?
I did. It took me 2 sessions. I made it almost to the end. And when CM Punk was out there talking, and it was good stuff. I fell asleep, and I woke up, and it was over. So I had to watch the last segment the next day. But I loved the Punk stuff. I thought he did a great job with the TLC match. I thought he did a great job with the confrontation with Rock. It did feel a little bit like the bitch-ass teenager stepping to an NFL player in terms of just the size and look of these two guys. And it's like, if this was a real fight, I'm really not going to put my money down on Punk. And I'm really curious to see it when the dust settles after they rub up against each other at the Royal Rumble. What's going to happen to Punk? Is it going to elevate him any more in terms of his star, or is it going to just kind of be a thing where he wrestled The Rock and, like Gregory Helms' life moved on? After that, no one really perceived him as being any bigger of a guy. And I thought that they had a lot more chemistry than a lot of people thought they did. And I saw a lot of the feedback after the show, having not seen the show myself, and I was expecting to see some issues with, you have one guy that really knows how to cut a money promo in Rock and has drawn money with his mouth for years, both in wrestling and in film and TV. And then you have a guy like Punk, and you're going to see a huge drop-off between the two when they battle. I honestly didn't see that. I thought they did fine. I thought it was a fine confrontation. I just thought, just in terms of credibility and seeing these two guys and how they look, and the polish of Rock as a real star that just has that connection with the camera and watching on TV versus Punk, who connects but not to that level. It was interesting. I thought Rock kind of ventured into cliche land a little too much and got a little too cute. And I think that he'll, in 4 or 5 appearances on WWE TV, he'll have that back to where it should be. And it was his first night back doing wrestling promos. You can fall into cliche land, especially when you're on in the legend status as a guy, and you can kind of rest on that stuff. But I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be a really great Royal Rumble card. If you look at a lot of these Royal Rumble cards over the last several years, and they kind of really hang on to the Rumble match hooking you, and you live and die by that. And a lot of the years, the Rumble really hasn't lived up to that hype and hasn't really delivered, both in the in-ring and finish for the Rumble. And then that's it. They usually, the concept or the premise for the Rumble is that you don't want to put any matches in. They're just going to be buried, and that you want to hold that off until February, if not WrestleMania. So don't try to give those matches away. You have a lot of TV, a lot of time. You can get some juice out of those matches. The pay-per-view is sold because of the Rumble. I disagree. I think you really do need a good quality, high-caliber, credible world title match, and you need the Rumble. And if anything, you should heat up everyone as much as you can, both in the undercard on the Rumble and the Rumble itself, and not just say, we got this great gimmick match and that will sell everyone. I think that's kind of lazy and presumptuous. And I think this year they are not being lazy and they are not being presumptuous. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Brock Lesnar in the mix somehow in the finish of that match. I mean, I could see easily something happening where maybe the Shield come in and are unsuccessful, and you think, okay, the Rock shut them down. The first guy shuts them down when no one else could. John Cena, Ryback, and he turns around and boom, Brock Lesnar's there. They had a plan B. Maybe something like that. Now, don't quote me because I'm just pulling that out of my ass, but it'd be interesting, and I like when wrestling can get you thinking and can engage you and get those creative juices going. And it seems like CM Punk is very good with his stories and his matches and his feuds and his journey in getting that out of a lot of people, whether it was the weeks following the pipe bomb promo or his match with John Cena. It seems like he's very good at getting that out of the inner fan and all of us. So that's a good thing. Yeah,
and I got to agree with you about CM Punk and The Rock on Raw. The difference in just appearance, I thought was pretty staggering. I thought you definitely had to suspend your disbelief to think of the two kind of on the same playing field, as far as, in a physical, fight or, in a wrestling match. And I also thought CM Punk's promo, I thought it was good, but at the same time I thought it was kind of a rehash of a lot of his earlier stuff and didn't really pertain necessarily to The Rock, or he didn't connect it as well as he had in the past to connect, to pertain to The Rock. So it was a good promo. It was definitely the strong point of the show. I just thought it was missing a little bit. I thought, like you said, The Rock was a little too cute. The Cookie Puss stuff I thought wasn't quite as clever as the Fruity Pebbles stuff he did with Cena, but it was his first promo in a while, and I thought they did a good job. And I absolutely agree that I think we'll see Lesnar involved at the Royal Rumble. And I think that Rock and CM Punk, it's probably the biggest title match they've had for the Royal Rumble. And I agree with you. I think it's good that they are making it a big event. I think it's important to start the new year off big, on the pay-per-view front and on the television front, which they are doing this year. And it should be a good one. I mean, it's the first Rumble I've been excited for in a while. Last year was kind of almost a throwaway show. And so it should be it'll be interesting to see what they do over the next few weeks, especially with the 20th anniversary coming up this Monday.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that the 20th anniversary is coming up, and they are so good usually about promoting and making things even bigger than they have any right to be. But then they have something that's just logically very big, and there's a lot of I think a lot of sentimentality about what you can do for something that kind of show. I remember the first Raw. I remember watching it, and I remember just being my mind being blown by this live show and an intimate atmosphere, which was a 800,000 seat arena, which WWE never ran back in '93, even when business was slower. But to see them in this intimate setting with just this unpredictable TV, craziness happening, Ric Flair losing his job at WWF to Mr. Perfect, like on the second or third show. I'm like, what is happening? It just blew my mind to see this in the early days of the program. And fast forward 20 years, I'm feeling a lot older than I did when I first watched that in middle school. And I don't know what they're going to do for the big show. You don't want to overdo it just to justify you have to commemorate the 20th anniversary. I mean, if it works in their storylines for Undertaker to be there, then that's great. But he shouldn't necessarily have to be there because it's the 20th anniversary, and that's it. They've also kind of trotted out the legends from Steamboat to Flair over the last few weeks, so it's kind of like it's lost a little bit of that luster it would have had. And you're not going to get anyone crazy like Hulk Hogan coming out there, which is unfortunate. But there's only so many guys you can pull out. Could it be Shawn Michaels? Okay, maybe. And I don't know what that really does for anyone because I don't think he's going to be doing anything after it, but that's fine. Going back to my thought about Brock Lesnar and his return, maybe you wouldn't do it at the Royal Rumble because, it's a big audience, but you're going to have like quadruple that audience, probably actually a lot more than quadruple the audience the next night on Raw. So why not wait and do everyone's going to be watching what happened at the Royal Rumble and have Brock come out that night and do his thing because as we know, he has a very, very limited amount of dates with WWE. So you want to get as much bang and as much exposure as you can for the guy and his appearances. And obviously the bigger stage is Raw. Creatively, I would love to say that it's important that the people that pay for this product get with a little bit more and WWE goes a little bit above and beyond, and you have Brock Lesnar at the Royal Rumble because people are paying $50-$60 for the show. But the reality being what it is, I could also see them pulling back and waiting one night to show him on the main show on USA Network. So it's interesting. I'm very curious to see what they do next week. I think they can do anything they want. They have virtually everyone but guys like Hulk Hogan and Kurt Angle under a contract, and I think there probably is a good shot you see guys like Ric Flair come out. I'd love to see a surprise, someone that we would never think would be there. Obviously I don't think China will be coming back, but it'd be kind of interesting to see guys that may be on the shit list making a surprise cameo. I don't know who that would be off the top of my head. I guess guys like Jake the Snake are doing a lot better now, and I guess he's living with DDP or something out in Cali. But it'd be interesting to see those kind of guys. I mean, I don't think you'll see Warrior, but and I don't think anyone expects to see those guys. But I'd just like to see something unique as a one-off. But
well, I almost, because there was talk of Rock against Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. I almost wonder if they would do Lesnar as a surprise entrant into the Royal Rumble and have him win the thing. I mean, it's probably not my first prediction, but it's probably not necessarily all that far off, and puts him right in the mix and puts him in the title match at WrestleMania.
Like them, Paulie, to go out there and announce it. And just promote it for weeks, get money out of it, and have them out there in a match where you have 30 guys in there, do all types of crazy shit. You can avoid the limitations of a Brock Lesnar who is going to have ring rust by having him go out there and chug along. Now, storyline and continuity-wise, didn't he retire after being Triple H? It's like, I don't know if it, WWE being what it is, they drop storylines all the time, so maybe I'm for something that really isn't relevant in 2013 WWE standards of booking, but I would like some sort of way to weave that logically so it would make sense. They have to do it at some point. They might as well figure it out soon if they haven't already.
Right.
Such an odd way to give closure to the whole thing and just to excuse Brock from the WWE TV for the time being, with virtually zero representation or anything of Brock Lesnar since like the week after SummerSlam. It's kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, it's been strange, and it's obvious they're really saving up all his dates for this last WrestleMania run. I hope that they do find a way to come to terms on a new deal, because I do think he brings something different that the other wrestlers don't bring to the show.
I think he's about Randy Orton's age, and he is a natural athlete. Obviously, he has incredible crossover appeal. He gets heat super easy. He's so credible. There's so few guys today that are credible. Miz is not credible. A million of the guys that are getting pushes aren't credible. This guy is a legit badass, and I know credibility today means so little, but when you see it and you watch it and you experience it, we all know how much it can mean, and it can mean a lot with Brock Lesnar, and it has meant a lot. And the guy had a tremendous match with Cena. The match with Hunter was what I expected to be, because we talked about, Hunter can only do what he can do, and gets him by, but I find those matches to be pretty uninspiring. But I think Brock in the Rumble would just be a fascinating kind of thing, and seeing him take on all comers and just being the big bully he can be. Now, realistically, I'm very curious to see how they put this in the mix for WrestleMania. I don't want to see Hunter Brock 2. I don't think many fans are clamoring for Hunter Brock 2. I'd rather see Hunter Taker. I'd rather see Hunter Punk. I'd rather see Undertaker Punk. I'd rather see Brock Rock. I'd rather see Brock versus a young guy that he can give the rub to, or something that would pay dividends down the road. Hunter, you can make the money for that night, but it's just like when you have like almost 40% of the people that are going to be on the WrestleMania card, maybe a little less, but they're tying up those important slots, and there's no money moving forward because these guys are going to work 2-3 days a year for WWE at most. Taker one date. It's like, well, really, that's hurting your future in terms of how you map this stuff out. It's fine to put one of those guys on, but like to have so much of your card blocked up by it's just detrimental. That's why I always like when you have these established guys rubbing up against the younger guys, and I think you just have to be judicious with who you put on what card. I mean, I'd love to see Shawn Michaels back, but I really don't want to see Shawn Michaels back on WrestleMania along with the rest of the crew. And I'm not saying Shawn Michaels is coming back, but it's also I don't want those guys to never come back. I just would like it to be. It's a balancing act, It's like you don't want Mick Foley and Steve Austin and Rock and all these guys on the same show when you really know that guys like Dolph Ziggler deserve it and are going to be at every house show and are going to be at every Raw and every TV and house show they're on after. You have to, be mindful of that, unless these guys are going to decide they want to, put in a full-time run, and that's obviously never going to happen for guys like Rock and Steve Austin.
Yeah, that's why I kind of think if they don't go with like Brock against The Undertaker or Brock against Rock, maybe someone like Ryback, even though Ryback's not a young guy by any means, but he is someone that they are pushing and someone that would definitely get the rub if Lesnar was leaving and they put Ryback over Lesnar. But I definitely don't think that many people are interested in a Triple H Brock Lesnar rematch.
Yeah, I think Ryback has a big credibility issue right now more than ever. That anytime that guy sells, they just give him so much shit. And I know there's a lot of stock put in the reactions that talent, especially emerging stars, get in MSG or in the New York metro market. And I'll tell you that response that Ryback got last month at TLC was very telling to me. I really did put stock in that because the crowd just didn't buy into him. And talk about credibility and the guy that's for real and legit. Well, there's your sample. There's Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Brock Lesnar is the real deal, and Ryback they see as this kind of mutant Goldberg thing. And there's no mystique about him. They started winning matches, and people like that because it's the oldest story in the wrestling book. Climbing that ladder, and he's a bigger guy, and that's always clicked if they have a little bit of success at WWE. He kind of reminds me at the end of the day of Ahmed Johnson. Of all the guys, I could really put a finger on it in terms of what his potential is, and I find him to be clumsy, a little bit reckless, and probably overvalued. And I think WWE has played the Ryback card perfectly in that I think they knew how much juice and how much they could get out of this guy, and I think they knew that it was a short-term bridge, but not in the long term a real valuable piece on the board. And I sense that they got that, and maybe it would have been different if he had beat Punk at Hell in a Cell. I just don't close my eyes and think about the WWE if that had happened, and I don't think it would have been a great product. I think they made the right decision, and sometimes when you're a booker, promoter, you have to make tough decisions. They're not all easy and logical like a lot of the ones WWE botches, but they made a tough one, and I think they made the right call.
And then last night at the SmackDown tapings in Miami, The Rock returned. I think that's his first SmackDown appearance in probably like 10 years. I can't remember the last time.
I think it's his first SmackDown since the show was called SmackDown and he appeared on the premiere. Back in
he was when they first did the brand extension, he was the SmackDown guy. It was Austin on Raw and Rock on SmackDown.
It's been so long. It's been
right. Yeah. It's been a long time. The last time I can remember was when he had that feud with Hulk Hogan, and he was the heel when he came back and was doing the whole Hollywood thing and asking for his tofu and doing that whole bit. I can't remember any time since then that he's been on the show. So it's obvious. Obviously, it's going to be one of the bigger episodes, and they also had a world title change with Alberto Del Rio beating the Big Show. It almost seemed out of nowhere. I mean, they didn't publicize this match on Raw. It was really just kind of out of the blue. Do you think? What was your experience? Have you had world title changes change at the last minute, or you're informed of it that day back when you were with WWE?
Oh, absolutely. Whether it was an injury or a just impulsive decision by Vince, it happened a lot. One of the big ones was Kurt Angle. When it was a Batista, I think had we thought he was going to be okay. He had a terrible tear in his back. I can't remember the muscle. I'm terrible at that stuff. But basically, the muscle in his back peeled up. Like, I don't know what he... And
this is Kurt Angle or Batista?
It was Batista, and what happened is he had been working, I think, Mark Henry. They had done an angle. Maybe it was I'm terrible with specifics sometimes. Really good sometimes, other times just helpless. But I think they had done an angle where Mark Henry had done, which wasn't a cliche at the time. They had peeled the cage open and had gone in there and clobbered Batista. And somehow Dave had gotten injured. Mark didn't injure him. It was just one of those circumstances where he got injured. and his muscle rolled up his back. Literally, it peeled up, if you can imagine that, like you're rolling up a rug, and it just snapped right back up his back, and he wanted to gut it out and drop the title the right way and do what was right for business, but he physically couldn't, and WWE standards in terms of what they expected and demanded from their talent was changing by the day, and it was getting better for everyone involved. And that was one of the first instances where Vince decided that we're not going to jeopardize our talent to that extent, and the title is vacated. I might be getting some of the particulars wrong here, but I believe the title is vacated, and we had to come up with a way to flip the title. I haven't heard this news earlier in the morning, and it came down to, I think, a battle royal that Kurt Angle won. And I remember I was the one that came up with the concept of doing a battle royal, because I was like, well, you could do a tournament on the show, and that's cool. But Vince, we had been doing a lot of tournaments around then, so Vince didn't want to just do that. So I said, well, you could always do a battle royal and kind of like hype that up and kind of like, do a little marketing for the Royal Rumble by saying this is like just a little sample of what you're going to get in a few weeks, and that's the direction we went in. So that was kind of cool to be so involved with a world title change. And so that kind of stuff would happen all the time. Hell, it happened with me in MLW. I had to do a title switch, which I wasn't sure I was going to make, because Steve Corino was supposed to win the world title in Fort Lauderdale, and it was going to be our biggest show. We had about 2,000 tickets sold, and for an indie, that's huge. Trust me, that's like 50,000 for WWE. That's huge for wrestling, and back in 2003. And so we had it all laid out. We knew where we were going, everything for the next several months, and Corino was going to win the title. But he had gotten off his plane, or he had departed from Japan 2 weeks earlier after a 0-1 tour to come back home, but no one had seen him since he got home. And in wrestling, and that's a very bad thing to happen. And Steve had a great reputation, and so it was like such a weird thing, but no one knew where he was. No one. I mean, his best friends, his family didn't know where he was. Turned out there was a girlfriend of his had made some crazy claims about him, and basically somehow some involving using her checking account or checking. And she had broken up with her, and then she put out some claim about some using his checking account or something, or her checking account, and had got him in trouble. And they basically took him off the plane when he was transferring from Detroit to Philly or something, and they put him in a federal pen for like 2 weeks for some sort of wire fraud, whatever it was. They finally, the woman, killed the charges, and he was exonerated or whatever, and was totally legally cool. But he showed up to the show in Fort Lauderdale from Detroit. He had lost 15, 20 pounds. He hadn't slept in like 2 weeks. He had big bags under his eyes. I didn't know what the truth was at that point. I didn't know any of the circumstances about his relationship and the allegations. So I had to make a split decision and judge a character. Is this guy telling me what's up and for real, or is this guy like some shady guy? And do I want my title around a guy that's in a bad place? And is he going to go back to jail? Am I going to have my champion in jail? And so it's like, that's one of those weird, crazy things where you have to figure out, what am I going to do here? And really you just kind of take a leap of faith and use your instincts. And I decided to continue to put, going down the path we were going in the booking and give the title to Steve Corino. And turned out, like I said, he was cleared of all those allegations and charges, and life went on. And I'm sure that guy looks back like that was the biggest nightmare in his life. But, Steve was a super cool guy and the man of his word and had great integrity and everything. So I trusted him, and I made the right call, because obviously he was an innocent guy. But, when you're a promoter and you're a booker, Dana White says it, I experienced it, and Vince experiences it to this day, is that you get the worst and best news first thing in the morning and then last before going to bed. And that was always true with me. I mean, you're going to get some crazy news, and it's going to turn your life upside down, either for the best or for the worst. And you're never going to just get some mundane news. It's going to be something crazy at like 5 in the morning. It's just going to just make your jaw drop. And that's the life of a promoter. That's the glamorous life of a promoter.
Yeah. Also this weekend is kind of an end of an era in MMA. Strikeforce is presenting their final card from Oklahoma City. I have no idea why they're doing it from Oklahoma City as opposed to San Jose. Kind of bittersweet for me. Just a few months after I had started Fightline, I had been credentialed to a Strikeforce show, which was the first MMA event I had ever been to. And so I'd been to a lot of their shows early on, and so it's kind of sad to see them go, although I do think it's the best thing since the UFC purchased them, and it's been kind of downhill since then. Yeah, are you going to be watching Saturday's event?
If I've got nothing going on, I will probably watch it. I don't know. I was there at a very special time when really felt like a grassroots company had transcended into something bigger. And I'm talking about the Heavyweight Grand Prix. And I was doing a show for Showtime in conjunction with Strikeforce, which was Frank Shamrock kind of pulling back the curtain and showing you this small San Jose fight organization blowing up, and you got to really meet the real Bigfoot Silva and see Scott Coker cutting deals in hotel rooms and stuff, and you got to see like this company going to the next level. So that was the show that we were doing then. So I was there for this very special time. You felt something was special, something was happening. They had CBS was coming around again. They were really considering airing MMA after the issues they had earlier with the brawl and everything on TV. And it felt like they had a good house in the Northeast. Showtime was going overboat with PR. I mean, they booked the Roseland Ballroom, and they were doing these live fight sessions where fans, media could come in and watch these guys training and cutting promos. Josh Barnett was brought in. Fedor was there with his entourage. They had great talent. They had great depth, and it felt like a really viable alternative to UFC, and it felt like it was actually a really fresh product, whereas UFC was kind of feeling a little stale at that moment. And so, it was really cool to see something kind of emerging, and then I get the call from I don't even remember who. I think Dave Meltzer called me and was like, "Do you know anything about this?" Because he knew I was literally following with cameras every move Strikeforce is making at every level, and I said, "Let me check," and I called Frank, and Frank was just waking up in San Jose. He had no idea about it, Frank Shamrock, and this is something he had helped kind of build too. He had shepherded in this product and this promotion, and we were all just so surprised that they were acquired by Zuffa. Scott Coker was doing such a good job, and being credentialed and going to these fights, when you go backstage at the arena to get your credentials, it really was like a ma and pa type vibe. You didn't have this big organization with all this muscle to handle all the credentials. It was really like a girl or two just giving you. It was so laid back, either Showtime or the Strikeforce handling it, depending, and it was such a mellow vibe. And it was to me, when I found it to be such a cool ma and pa, I think I can type organization. So it was I look back and I really wish they had made that balancing act work. And I know Fedor was a big issue with that, with what he was requiring to be paid and everything. And business is about taking risk and risk management and risk versus reward. And we all take those risks, and sometimes they pay off, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes you can bail yourself out. Sometimes you don't. I mean, Vince McMahon, teetered on bankruptcy many times with WWF, and ultimately he was able to fight back and be quite successful. And we've seen the problems with so many of these startup groups, and we've seen even TNA in wrestling. I mean, they are living off the lifeline of Panda Energy. They aren't really self-sufficient and a solvent company in the truest sense. It's very hard to be a promotion and continue to sustain, and especially as you're expanding. Going from the regional stage to the national stage is very hard, because you've got to up your marketing staff, you have to up your infrastructure across the board, your fighters, your production people, you got to make licensing deals. You have to find ways to realize revenue that you really didn't have to worry about when you're just running, a regional product that's just playing off of the local versus local dynamic. And ECW, Paul Heyman, that's another great example of trying to take a regional thing that had a lot of traction and trying to turn it into a national or global brand. It is so hard, and for every success, there's like a million almost were, and Strikeforce is one of those ones that they were absorbed by Zuffa, and they became a zombie, and right away you could tell the difference. And so, this one will go down, and I don't think many people will watch it, and the tree will fall in the woods, and whatever pops up, we'll see. I mean, I think we have a lot of brands out there, but none of them with really any juice. The Invictus show thing, people liked it, but I never really tracked it. You have Shark Fights, you have XFC. I mean, there's a lot. I think XFC is the one I like the most because they've demonstrated they can use that Strikeforce regional, local versus local dynamic and draw really big crowds. St. Petersburg all the way up to now, like New Orleans and Alabama and Tennessee. So I like them. I think they're well run. I don't know about their branding and going off the extreme thing so much, but they know how to run a card and they know how to run a show. So maybe they'd be the best option. It's hard to tell. The more organizations you have, the more confusion there is in the marketplace. But we'll see. 2013 is going to bring a lot of change and some competition, and certainly a lot of oversaturation in the marketplace between Bellator and UFC and whoever ends up on Showtime. And does CBS Sports get in the mix? They just aired the Dream Fight card from Japan from New Year's. So there's so much stuff out there, and is there a demand for any of it?
Yeah, and I think if any promotion is thinking about using Fedor, they should look back at history that it hasn't really always paid off. It's been kind of a costly risk for a lot of promotions. Yeah, I mean,
Fedor's a guy that meant something in 2004, and that's a lifetime ago in the sport. And if this was wrestling, it would be a lifetime ago too. I mean, it's a long time, man, that this guy has drawn money and has been a force. And that was in Japan, where things often don't transfer stateside very well. And again, by the time he got over here and a lot of the issues and negotiations with UFC and stuff, it's just like the Randy Couture fight, the Brock Lesnar fight, all the ways you could have made money were out the door or out the window once he lost. And the rest is history. I don't see anyone, clamoring for a Fedor fight. I don't see anyone I know that wants to see Fedor on TV for free. So that's a problem.
Okay, well, thanks again, Court. And is there anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out, like always. We do MLW Radio. It comes out every Monday morning. You can go to MLW.com. We're syndicated by Stitcher Radio. We're on iTunes. We actually beat UFC's podcast recently to be one of the top sports podcasts on iTunes. So that's a pretty crazy thing. This past week, we came live from ESPN down at the Boardwalk at Disney's Walt Disney World, and we've had Colt Cabana on in recent weeks. So we're always doing something crazy with the show. Conan is the host, along with St. Laurent. Sometimes I jump on, and they always have some interesting conversation. The show is basically like eavesdropping on your best friends who happen to be in wrestling, telling crazy stories about the business, from hanging with Vince McMahon to, hanging with Rey Mysterio, or, crazy stories from back in the day in WCW, to having guests like MVP and Ultimate Warrior on and sharing their stories and very unique stories that you've never heard before, and it's free. So